We've had some very bad court decisions. The Flores decision is a disaster, I have to tell you. Judge Flores, whoever you may be, that decision is a disaster for our country.
President Trump railing against the Flores Agreement, a longstanding court settlement that sets standards for migrant detention. And what you heard there was Donald Trump learned enough to find out there is a Flores Agreement, and it's powerful, but not quite enough to learn why it's called that. It is not named after a judge issuing the ruling. There's no Judge Flores, but rather it's named after Jenny Flores, a girl who fled El Salvador in the 1980s and tried to join her undocumented mother in California. But she was caught and held in severe conditions, a motel surrounded by a barricade of razor wire with severe overcrowding. The Times reporting those children were then subjected to body cavity searches. And while her mother wanted to rescue her, she feared showing up as an undocumented person would get them both detained. That was the road to this Flores Agreement. Advocates suing for better conditions, and that is what Trump is now trying to cancel, attempting to seize indefinite detention powers, which courts have limited even for suspected terrorists at Guantanamo, let alone these children. Now, Trump is not the first president to tangle with the courts over these rules, but he is going the farthest to try to eliminate human rights protections and end Flores, which began with those migrants fighting in court for their rights, and with their legal advocate, attorney Peter Shea, who won this battle and kept tangling with different administrations over the decades.
We think that, at bottom line, this is really a policy aimed against Central American refugees.
I don't believe that Congress would ever vote to amend the United States Constitution to deprive citizenship to children born in this country.
There was not a well-thought-out policy, that no plan for reuniting these children with their parents.
Peter Shea filed the original 1985 Flores lawsuit as lead counsel. He's been advocating for immigrant rights ever since and leads the Center for Human Rights and Constitutional Law and joins me for this exclusive interview. It's an honor to have you here, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Donald Trump, big picture, says all this started with Barack Obama. Is that true?
That is really completely false. The president has blamed President Obama for separating children and claimed that he brought them back together with their parents through an executive order. That was completely false. President Obama never separated children from their parents. President Trump did that, and in reaction to a public outcry, 2 months later, he issued an executive order rescinding that separation policy. In that order, he ordered former Attorney General Jeff Sessions to file a motion in the court immediately attempting to terminate the Flores settlement. That was unsuccessful. That took place about a year ago.
Yeah, let me pause on that with you, because you literally started this. I wonder how you feel. I know you care a lot about the rights of these individuals. I wonder how you feel having won that battle, set a lot of immigration law, and then watch this president not only push against it, but try to basically destroy Flores. Do you think he'll get away with this?
I think it is really sad, and a commentary on this president, that he is the first president in 21 years who is actively engaged in attempting to dismantle an agreement that really just provides a couple of basic important rights for children in detention. One is the right to humane treatment, and that is accomplished by requiring that children, as expeditiously as possible, be placed into a licensed facility. And the other is the right to prompt family reunification if the child is not a flight risk or a danger to herself or to others.
Exactly, so, and I'm going to jump in and say, sir, this is what you've been working on. A lot of Americans this year were learning about this and saying, how can this be? And part of the answer is you won rulings against it. With regard to the conditions, the Trump officials, as you know, they say in public and in court, it's not so bad. Take a look.
So if you think of yourself as a college dormitory, that's what the rooms look like.
They are campus-like settings with appropriate medical, educational, recreational, dining, and private housing facilities.
Is that true in your experience?
That is not true in our experience. We have the right to monitor the terms of the settlement, and so we have monitoring teams, lawyers, child welfare experts who go into detention facilities, go into Border Patrol facilities. And what we have found, particularly in the Border Patrol facilities where children have been held for days and for weeks on end, is severe overcrowding, children being held in cages, children not having medical assessments, children being held in very unsanitary conditions. And then what we have found for children who move beyond the Border Patrol into Office of Refugee Resettlement facilities, those facilities are supposed to be licensed under state laws, and children are held there for months on end while extreme vetting takes place of their parents, when these children should be really released in 2 or 3 weeks, and instead they're detained for months on end.
And I have to fit in one more break for some of my other guests. I'm curious, last question to you with the limited time.
Yeah.
What drew you early in your career to fight for these kids coming across the border? I mean, years ago when a lot of people weren't thinking about this.
You know, years ago, what drew us into the case and the Center for Human Rights into this case is that this population was really uniquely vulnerable. It was hard to, immigrants in general make up a vulnerable population and a highly exploitable population in this country. But these unaccompanied and accompanied immigrant children are really among the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. And when we filed this case, they have no legal rights. And since we filed the case and achieved a settlement in 1997, tens of thousands of children have been treated humanely and have been released relatively promptly
and you say
thanks
that,
to the settlement.
You say that's so important because people are so concerned and frustrated, and what you're outlining is amidst that for years, it's these court-sanctioned protections that you fought for that have improved the lives of some people. A lot of people know about your case, Flores. Now they know one of the people behind it, Peter Shea. Thanks so much for coming on the beat tonight, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to fit in a break.